Judica County is brought to you by Whitaker and Hamer, attorneys and counselors at law, your law firm for life.
Welcome back into Judica County Radio. Your hosts, Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer. They're attorneys. They're the managing partners at Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm. And again, practicing attorneys here in North Carolina. Offices located conveniently for you in Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay-Varina, Gastonia, and in Morehead City. I'm Morgan Patrick, consumer advocate. Each and every week, the attorneys go back and forth on legal topics. So we are hitting question and answer on real estate today. If you've got a legal situation you're facing, you can always call Whitaker and Hamer, 800-659-1186. Leave your contact information, briefly what the call's about, and an attorney will be in touch with you, 800-659-1186, or email your questions to the show. We'll answer it on a future broadcast. It's info@judicacounty.com. That's info@judicacounty.com. Again, Q&A, real estate the focus. Josh?
Yeah. We had a real estate question before the break, but we're gonna move into something else. We might come back to real estate, but this next one, this guy asking this question, I'm trying to boil it down because it's like a paragraph. But basically, this guy was in a car accident, right? He was in a car accident. The parties couldn't settle. He was not at fault. He was injured significantly or severely, and they ended up going to trial, right? Because that's what happens. You're in an accident. Sometimes you try to meet, there's a mediation and there's a whole process to try to settle a personal injury claim. A lot of times they won't settle, and so you have to prepare for and go to trial. So this one went to trial. Our guy won a judgment. It doesn't have an amount here. I'm gonna say it was $1 million, and he's basically asking now what. So he won the trial. The insurance company was on the hook for a small amount, let's say really small, let's say $30,000. So he gets a judgment against the driver that hit him for $1 million. That driver has insurance, but not enough to cover it. So that insurance company just turns over what they owe. And his question is now what? And so basically this could be any situation where you have a judgment against somebody. It's nice when there's insurance there to cover it. A lot of times that's what personal injury attorneys are looking for. They're looking for insurance coverage. So sometimes you sue people and they're what we call judgment proof, meaning you can get a $50 million judgment against a defendant, but that defendant may be judgment proof. What does that mean, Joe? What does it mean when somebody's judgment proof?
So yeah, basically if you're judgment proof, it just means that there's nothing you own nothing that a judgment could attach to, right? So you don't have real property that a lien could be placed on. You don't have, there's just no way for you to realize any value from this judgment. So you could have a $10 billion judgment against somebody, but it's only as good and as valuable as the person that the judgment is against.
Yeah, this, when we have folks who move, me and Joe, it's a good time to remind you that we're only licensed to practice in North Carolina, so we're always talking about North Carolina law. But when people move here from other states like Florida and Texas and New York, they ask me questions at closing about what do they need to do to set this up as a homestead. They ask about homestead exceptions, and in some states you can exempt your residence from a judgment. That's what a homestead exception here. In North Carolina, you don't really have a homestead exception. You have statutes that reserve a certain amount of equity in your home, a certain amount of equity in a vehicle, certain personal effects. So the statutes automatically protect some of your more basic property from the execution of a judgment, protect it in a bankruptcy, that kind of thing. And so when we go out to serve our $1 million judgment on this defendant, he's got to own something in excess of what's protected by statute. And a lot of people don't own anything in excess of what's protected by statute. If you have a super, fancy car, a lot of that equity in that car, if you have any, is not going to be protected. If you have a big house, only a certain amount of equity is protected. And so this judgment lien can attach to everything you own that's not protected by the North Carolina it's exemption statute. So that's what judgment proof means. Like I can try to collect on this judgment, and the sheriff will go out there, not be able to find anything to sell. You can use a judgment to foreclose on real property, but there has to be real property that's not exempt for you to be able to do that. And so there's a lot of protections against a debtor to a certain extent. And so a lot of times personal injury attorneys will look at that. They'll say, okay, this is all the insurance that's available, but we know these folks own this or they own that. But that's what's next. And then the other thing that could be next is it could be appealed, right? If you go to Superior Court in Wake County and you lose, you might have an appealable issue, and you can go to the North Carolina Court of Appeals if you have an appealable issue. So that's the other thing that could happen. You either have to go ahead and start collecting this judgment, or in a certain amount of time, the defendant can appeal it to the Court of Appeals. I think that answers this guy's question. What happens now?
Yeah, you're welcome, guy. That's a good answer, man.
Well, I lost my next question, so
you
I
but you were in the zone on that one, man. Like if you never answered another question, like that's your.
I feel like
we slam dunk.
I feel like we've
like
done
a
that one
walk-off
before.
It's a walk-off question.
Yeah, it's a walk-off. We should do that more, man. Get better and better at answering the same question every week, man.
All right, I'm about to my next question here.
All right, well, I'll do this. You're listening to Judica County Radio. Your hosts are Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer. They're the managing partners at Whitaker and Hamer. And again, office is conveniently located for you: Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay-Varina, Gastonia, and Morehead City. And their motto: your law firm for life, Whitaker and Hamer. If you've got a legal situation that you're facing, look, we get it. It can be frustrating. You can get answers to your questions by calling Whitaker and Hamer, 800-659-1186. That's 800-659-1186. Leave your contact info, briefly what the call's about, and an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer will be in touch. We are in the middle of question and answer, doing some real estate, doing a car accident question there. What's up next, Josh?
I got the next question I have. I'm going to bounce back to real estate, because the next question is a private road question, and we just talked about an easement. Usually, easements, another word for those in the vernacular, is a private road, right? An access easement. And so here we've got someone who has access. That's not the issue. So they've gotten over that issue. They have access to a main road versus a private road. But their question is maintenance. And so they're basically asking, hey, we purchased a home. Several homes in the cul-de-sac share a private road. There is no maintenance agreement. How do we go about maintaining the private road? And so that actually comes up quite a bit. Joe, you probably see that a lot.
Yeah, I see it a good amount, man. A good amount. And it's one of those things, and kind of to piggyback on that private road maintenance agreement issue, you've also got a lot of people don't understand that when a new subdivision is developed around these parts, the roads aren't automatically made public, right? Like you're going to, the plat of the subdivision is going to be the dedication of those roads to become public. But for them to be accepted, there's various things that have to happen, and there's standards that must be met for the NCDOT or whatever municipality is going to be maintaining these roads to accept them. So there's also going to be a component in those situations where a road is going to ultimately be public, but it's the same concept. You need an agreement in place dictating how the maintenance of that road is going to take place. So you're going to set forth who's responsible for it, whether it's an individual, whether it's a developer, whether it's a group of people. And the more firmly and the more well spelled out you can talk about the obligations of each person and what they're going to do and what they're going to owe and what the maintenance obligation is going to be, the better.
Yeah, a lot of these, when I think about private maintenance, a private road, in my mind, I'm thinking about a country road. It comes off like a highway, like off Highway 401, and not a planned subdivision, kind of like family land. It's been sold over the years, and so it wasn't created with a purpose of other people coming in, and so you end up with a situation where you might have access, which is what a closing attorney is concerned about. They want to make sure you have access if you go buy this property, but the closing attorney is not very concerned about maintenance. But when that comes up, everybody does have an obligation for maintenance, but how are you going to enforce it? How are you going to get everybody to chip in? And this is a big problem. We have some clients up in the mountains, and this is always a big problem in the mountains because a lot of those mountain roads see some pretty bad weather, and they have to be – some of those mountain roads are scary, those gravel mountain roads.
Yeah, man, they're scary, dude. They're scary to drive on. There's bears.
And they have to be maintained.
And
that can be kind of costly. And so most homeowners get together and figure it out. There's always one homeowner who doesn't want to doesn't want to or isn't able to contribute, and you kind of have to figure that out. But hopefully there's a recorded maintenance agreement, and that's something you can ask about. If you're buying a home on a private road, your closing attorney is going to make sure you have good access.
That's something you
watch
should
out for
ask
bears.
about.
Watch out for bears.
Watch out for bears, man.
But maintenance is sometimes a good question to ask, because that's a question that can kind of dangle.
Yeah, you don't want to have those questions dangling. All right, Utica County Radio, Josh Whitaker, Joe Hamer, they're your hosts. They're also the managing partners at Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm. They have offices almost on every corner. They're kind of like Starbucks or McDonald's. Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay Varina, Gastonia, and Morehead City. Again, Whitaker and Hamer, the motto, your law firm for life. If you've got a legal question you're facing, you need some answers, you can always call the firm. 800-659-1186. Leave your contact info, briefly what the call's about, and an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer will be in touch. Again, the number 800-659-1186, and you can always email your questions to the radio show. We'll answer them on a future broadcast. info@JudicaCounty.com. When we return, we've got more question and answer with Josh and Joe.